Howdy, y'all. Caleb here. Today we're talking the basics of Kroak and how to get his spells to cover the board. I had a comment, I don't know, a while back that was asking about how to position Kroak to maximize his spell range. So we're going to go through and look at how we get Kroak from this to this. Basically board-wide spell coverage. So we're going to go through some of those abilities and how we chain those together, how we position them, and now you can win your games. So let's talk the basics of Kroak and what makes him so good right now. So he is the supreme master of order. He is an incredible caster in his own right here. And on his war scroll, we see this rule. Add 2 to casting, dispelling, and unbinding rolls for this model. In addition, this model can attempt to unbind enemy spells that are cast anywhere on the battlefield and attempt to dispel endless spells anywhere on the battlefield. So the first thing is he's a native +2 to cast, which is good, but we can make that higher. We can get Kroak up to a +4 to cast, and we'll look into that here in a minute. But really, the underrated thing is that he can unbind anywhere on the board. You don't have to be within 30 inches to unbind anybody. You don't have to be within range for those unbinds. You don't have to be within range to dispel. You can do that anywhere on the board. That is very useful in a magical defense role. And so when your opponent's setting up their army, generally you're deploying your wizards to where you can't be unbound. They can't do that against Slans and Kroak. They can both unbind anywhere on the board. So very useful there, especially when they're at +2. The next ability we're going to look at is a Sacred Asterisms. This is the innate buff we have for all Seraphon. We get to choose one of 3 abilities at the beginning of our hero phase and apply that to our army. The one that we're going to use if we're running Kroak is generally the Sage's Staff. At the start of your hero phase, pick one friendly Seraphon wizard. At the start of the hero phase. I may have said yours. Pick one friendly Seraphon wizard. You can add 1 to casting or dispelling rolls for that wizard if it's your hero. Sorry, can't talk. If it is your hero phase, and you can add 1 to unbinding rolls for that wizard if it's in the enemy hero phase. So now we just get another +1 to casting, dispelling, unbinding. You're going to put that on Kroak if you've got Kroak. If for some reason you need some other spell to go off, sure. But if you run a Kroak, you're putting the Sacred Asterism of Sage's Staff on Kroak. So now he's +3 to cast. Arcane Vassal is another ability that Kroak has. When this model attempts to cast a spell before making the casting roll, you can pick either 1 friendly skink wizard that's within 12 inches of this model, or 1 friendly oracle anywhere on the battlefield. If you do so and the spell is successfully cast and not unbound, you must measure the range and visibility for that spell from that skink wizard or oracle. So, if we position these things correctly, we can add range to Kroak's spells. An oracle, unfortunately, right now we only have 1 oracle. That's a Troglodon. Generally, you're not going to play a Troglodon until its points go down or it actually does something in melee. Right now, it's just not worth it for this Arcane Vassal. The table's small enough, you can usually keep something within 12 inches. Notice it's not wholly within. You can put like an Arcane Tome on an Engine of the Gods. That becomes a wizard who also has a skink keyword. That works well for that. A lot of other times, it's going to be a Star Priest or a Star Seer. So if we go back and look at this picture where we have our deployment, you can see that our Skink Star Priest is within 12 inches, and our Engine of the Gods is within 12 inches, who probably has an Arcane Tome. So now you can cast through both of those models, and you've increased the effective range of Kroak sideways by, more than 24 inches here. So, but that applies as you go throughout the game. As you push those units forward, you can keep Kroak back if needed to keep him safe. So let's talk about what the spells we are casting through Kroak. And the first one is Comets Call. If you've ever played against Seraphon, or if you've ever played Seraphon, you know that Comets Call is kind of our calling card spell. This one has a casting value of 7. It's successfully cast. You pick up to D3 different enemy units anywhere on the battlefield. Each of those units suffer D3 mortal wounds, roll separately for each. If the casting roll was 10 plus, pick up to D6 different enemy units instead of up to D3. So this is our mortal wound bomb that hits anybody anywhere on the battlefield. Just incredibly good for plinking off mortal wounds, especially on those little support heroes. It's never going to kill anything turn one. It's not going to kill those support heroes turn one, but it's something that's going to happen constantly throughout the game. So generally, you're going to be hitting an enemy unit that you want to for 5 D3 mortal wounds throughout the game, unless you fail a cast, wizard gets killed, etc., etc. Very good at whittling other units down. Notice that 10 up is not a natural 10 up, and so for the bonus to get extra units. That means when Kroak is at either +2, +3, or +4, which we'll talk about here in a second, that he gets to get to that 10 plus a lot easier. 7 is a somewhat of a difficult cast, but Kroak has plenty of extra pluses to his cast. His next spell, and this is really where Kroak makes his money, is Celestial Deliverance. This is a kind of a core rule breaking spell because he's allowed to cast this multiple times. Let's read the rule. The caster can attempt to cast a spell up to 3 times in the same hero phase. Celestial Deliverance has a casting value of 7 the first time it's attempted in a phase, a casting value of 8 the second time it's attempted in a phase, and a casting value of 9 the third time it's attempted in a phase. Each time the spell is successfully cast, pick up to 3 different units within 10 inches of the caster, invisible to them, and roll 1 dice for each unit you pick. On a 2-up, that unit suffers D3 mortal wounds. If the unit's Chaos Demon unit, on a 2-up, it suffers 3 mortal wounds instead of D3 mortal wounds. Lots of rules, but it's kind of like a little mini Comets Call, but it only goes off in a 10-inch range. Now that's very close, but we are able to vassal cast this through the skinks that we talked about earlier, and we'll look here in a second how we can extend this value. It does get harder and harder to cast, but when we're at either 2, 3, or 4 pluses to cast, those things become a lot easier. When you're talking about rolling a natural 5 to cast the third one, that's not too bad. If you are facing off against Chaos Demons, it's going to do a flat 3 mortal wounds. That's a real nice to do, especially when you might pair this up with a Bastiladon who's going to get the accelerated damage for Chaos Demons as well. Now, realize that this is not going to kill an entire army. So take that into consideration, because Kroak just can't wade in and kill everything. Because at most, this is assuming everything is cast and all your 2-ups are rolled and you do well with these D3 mortal wounds. The most you're going to do with this spell is 3 D3 mortal wounds to a unit. So it's not going to kill hordes. It's not going to kill some tougher monsters in the game, but it will do consistent damage over time. So you're looking to put Kroak into a situation where he can do damage over time. Not just this one turn, but this turn, the next turn, and possibly the next. It's a model that you need to keep that damage rolling so it can kill off things. Celestial Conduit is another ability. This is from the Saurus Astrolith Bearer. You'll 100% of the time see Kroak paired with an Astrolith Bearer because it extends the range of its casting. So here's the rule. Celestial Conduit. Add 1 to casting rolls for friendly Seraphon wizards while they are within 12 inches of any models with this ability. In addition, add 6 inches to the range of any spell cast by friendly Seraphon wizards while they are within 12 inches of any models of this ability. So it gives 2 buffs here. One is +1 to casting roll, and the second one is +6 to the range of any spells cast. So that means this casting here is now up to a 16-inch AoE, area of effect. So that range, which is supposed to be kind of a real short, close range thing, is now up to 16 inches. That's where we get that expanded bubble. We've got 16 inches with the Astrolith pumping this up, and we can cast it through our Arcane Vassals, which effectively gives us another 12 inches. That's how we can end up covering the board with Kroak's spell. Also that extra +1, so we've got Kroak's native +2, Sacred Asterisms for another +1 for +3, And then we've got this +1 from Celestial Conduit. So Kroak should, in general, always be casting on +4 and unbinding or dispelling on +3. So now we go back to our deployment, and obviously we don't have a whole army here, but what we do have are some Saurus Guard. We have our 2 Skink Wizards, and this could be another, like a Starseer or something if you're not taking an Engine of the Gods. Or an Engine of Gods is seen a lot with an Arcane Tome to increase the range because it would make it a Skink Wizard. So we have Kroak here in the middle. You're gonna have to play Kroak a little bit more aggressively than you would generally do with a support wizard that doesn't really do anything in melee. So you are gonna push him forward a little bit more aggressively, but keep him within 12 inches of those wizards. So on deployment, we see our spellcasting range covered in these shaded green bubbles. So we can see Kroak's in this central circle here. This is Kroak's range with the +6 from the Astrolith. These other circles off to the other side are through the vassal casts of his Skink Wizards, which means if you are going second and the opponent is pushing forward onto these objectives, you have a decent chance at them getting into your your danger zone here. So if they are being aggressive, if they're pushing forward fast, you should be able to hit them with whatever you want to from Kroak. You can play Kroak back even further if you want to, as long as he's within 12 of these 2 wizards, you'll still be able to cast through them. So if they're playing aggressive, if they're coming up the board, if they're trying to score objectives here, then they might get into your range. But regardless, what you're looking for is you're setting up turn 2. So you're moving forward. You don't even really have to move Kroak forward if you don't want to, but you need to move forward your Skink Wizards. Because as you move forward your Skink Wizards, your radius of damage here for your spells is going to increase. So both of these move, I think both of them move 8, the Skink Star Priest and the Engine of God. So as they're moving up, you're going to increase your range of spells. So if they move 8 and you move Kroak to keep him within 12 of those, you can effectively cover the entire board with his spells. So that's turn 2. If you have set this up correctly, let's say you get a double turn. Now you've got 2 full turns of blowing up Kroak's spells onto everything in range. That means each unit is in range is going to, over 2 turns in a row, would take 6 D3 damage. Well, plus Comets Call twice. Let's add that on there. That's 8 D3 mortal wounds into at least 3 units. So that's where you can end up doing a ton of damage, but you've got to set it up correctly. You've got to be thinking at least 1 turn ahead. If I can't hit anything now, what am I setting up for the next turn? And what is going to happen in the turns after that? If you just moved up to where you could barely hit, let's say he's playing KG, if you just moved up for this turn to hit that unit but weren't able to hit anything else, get the double turn, you don't have any time to move because all this happens in your hero phase. So set these things up to where you know that in your next turn, you can, in your hero phase, you can still hit other units with Kroak's range. The weakness of this list and the times that I've beaten other people who are playing Kroak is the support heroes. So if you look at what this list here is doing, your number one, your single point of failure in a Kroak list is going to be your Astrolith Banner Bearer. That is going to be the one model that, if taken out, hurts Kroak the most. That takes 6 inches off of his range of his spellcast, which is, all the way around. So now that big 16-inch circle coming from Kroak is now only 10 inches. You're losing 12-inch, total area there of his spellcasting. But also another -1 to, or +1 to his cast. And we didn't even talk about a 6-up ward save that he gives to everybody that's around him. So that's your single point of failure in a Kroak list, is your Astrolith Bearer. A lot of times you might see him played into the Realm Shaper engine just to make him safer, make him tougher, and you get the extra minus to hit and plus to save, plus Lookout Sir. You can make him fairly tough, but people are going to be gunning for that Astrolith Bearer. Another thing they're going to be gunning for are your vassals, your arcane vassals. Any skink wizards you have on the list will be shot down as quick as they can because that's extending your range. You always need to have Saurus Guard in a Kroak list, and that's to protect Kroak, because Kroak does have this weird ability where he can accidentally auto-kill himself if he takes a couple wounds. Now, generally, that's not going to happen, but you don't want that chance of a roll of him taking a lot of wounds, and then you have to roll it and see if he dies or not. So take Guard, because they will help Kroak survive. They can take wounds off of him. All right, that's our basics on Kroak. Let us know if you have any other strategies that are important for playing a Kroak-focused list. And good luck out there. Don't let your Kroak die, because all of the old one's plans, I think, revolve around Lord Kroak. We'll see you guys.